instead of having just Helena, we're gonna ask, like, we're gonna let us, like, I'll say, okay, Shar, you get chapter 5, and then you read it, and then you get to sit up here and we're gonna read it together. So, and then if you have any extra insights, that's all the better. But
tell us ahead of time?
oh, absolutely, absolutely. We'll sit down and we can even take class and decide who wants to teach what and so forth. I haven't read it yet, so I've got to read it, but we'll probably do it.
You'll love it.
Yeah, probably later this summer. Okay, so get your books and let's read them, and then we'll just all have the discussions, and it'll be really fun. So. All right, and then if any of you brought your promises of the Constitution, I don't see any. Oh, good. So
Smile one time. Smile for me one time.
So when Pamela Openshaw did this book, so she basically took the Constitution and she narrowed it down to the Reader's Digest version. And then I'm doing the Reader's Digest version. And each vignette is a slide. So I'm really narrowing it down. So you can follow in the book. You don't have to, because each time you see a heading, that's the vignette. So if you have any questions as we go along, you can go back to that vignette. The thing that's cool is I put the title. You go right to the title, and then you can read through it. So if you have any questions, because this book was 327 pages. There's just no way to do that. This is part A, and there's a part B. So, but anyway, I think Pam was brilliant when she came up with this, and it's just an easy way to learn about the founding fathers and our constitutional rights. So, if you have, this is one of those. Feel free to say anything you want. Raise your hand. There's 70 slides, and we'll be done in an hour if we don't say anything, or less. So, okay, so we start out, we've got yesterday, today, and tomorrow on the front of the book. So let's start with yesterday. The Founding Fathers came together to create the United States Constitution, a system of government that offered a level of freedom and a level of protection and prosperity and peace never before seen in the modern world. Repeatedly, they stated that God had inspired their efforts. All right, and today, gradual erosion and deliberate political chicanery have greatly restricted our freedoms.
Oh, that's an understatement.
Yes. And our businesses are shackled with thousands of regulations and drive jobs out of the country. Taxes take our income, and the national debt has skyrocketed with no end in sight, and our media has vanished. Yes?
I was talking to Austin Hepworth, and he said that Joe Biden has passed a law on small businesses. 50% of them don't even know what this law is on reporting, and it's making 50% of them felons.
I heard something about that.
And the capital gains is like 44.6%.
Well, you know what they're trying to do is he's trying to get a wealth tax, and what they're going to do is, let's say you have a business and it's worth $1 million, and he does this wealth tax at 25%. So you got your business, it's running, and he wants 25% of it. Not that you sold it, but he wants 25%. So now you got to go out and take a loan to pay the tax on your business. So now you're going to go into debt on this wealth tax. Now, most businesses aren't just $1 million. Most businesses are millions and hundreds of millions. And that is just theft for no reason. Then, if you sell it, then you get to pay
the capital gains
tax.
44.6%.
44%.
Wow.
Did they pass it?
Well,
We don't know, not yet. It's in the works. This is part of his plan to get money from us. And then, of course, we know the fake news. Yeah.
It's slightly off topic, but this also applies to us being our age. So right now, Donald Trump has us in the lowest tax bracket
Yeah.
ever. So in terms of retirement, with money you have in your 401k that is saving for retirement, our financial guy said, you need to switch and be paying taxes on that now while it's 20%. And he ran the numbers and he showed us that if we didn't switch it, we would end up owing $1.2 million in tax to the federal government. We would run out of money before we hit the average death date. But if we paid the taxes now, we would have enough money until we were 110.
Wow.
And he said, Biden's trying to change these tax laws, but they don't expire until the end of 2025. I would recommend that everybody in here talk to a retirement specialist so you pay your taxes when they're 20%. It's a little painful to do it right now, but it's a lot worse than doing it when you're retired. It's just a game changer. And if Trump doesn't get in November, you're going to be looking at something like 40% tax instead of 20%, and it will take a good portion of your retirement.
Wow.
Don't
I would
forget your
switch to
property
gold.
tax.
What were you gonna say, Lawrence?
2 facts. The IRS is not it's a corporation.
Yes.
It's not a government entity.
Right.
Stop. And no taxes are ever paid to the federal debt. It's a private corporation. It goes into their pockets and it stays there.
It's just like the Federal Reserve.
The second is that the only ones that have to pay taxes are those who are selling alcohol, tobacco, and firearms, or a federal employee. That's it. That's in the IRS code. But as soon as you sign on the dotted line that you're going to live up to their contract on the IRS form, then you're indebted.
Yeah. It's a sham and a shame. And we don't understand how to get out from under it.
Are you gonna give us a lesson?
Well, let's talk about tomorrow. We think today's bad. Okay, we can return to the greatness we once knew. Yes, there will be challenges. But as we unite and come together, we can restore the Constitution to our founders. Americans, we have the strength, and we do have the determination and the desire to bring the principles of honor that made us a great nation. Okay, so we're going to talk about America in June of 1787. What were the people of America like at that time? Well, neighbors helped neighbors, and they farmed, and they loved the land right to their front door. And they waited in anticipation for the Constitution Convention to finalize. And times were hard with sanitation. Oh, what happened to that picture?
Times were hard.
Wow. And unbearable times of insect issues, but freedom was all but here and made their suffering worth it. So I don't know what happened to that picture, but it fizzled. A pattern of freedom. The great men who created our Constitution discovered the pattern for wise government. In the Bible, they drew heavily from the Old Testament. And in the Bible, they found God's political pattern for representative government. This pattern for liberty included a system of wise, self-ruled principles, leaders, and virtuous people. Freedom cannot remain among people without virtue to govern. And this is the problem we've got right now, is we don't have virtuous people. They are about loving themselves and loving power, and therefore they are not virtuous, and we cannot have freedom without it.
So,
Yeah, Tammy.
That just reminds me when I did the Lake Lincoln one, and I found the news article, and the General Smith, when he ran for president. So Joseph Smith, when he ran for president, his motto was "Make honor great again."
Oh, wow.
And I was like, oh wow, the original Trump. And
That's awesome.
he actually, if you remember, he went to Washington and asked for redress, and in the newspaper he said, when he was refused for all the damage and everything, he said that this president was worse than a dog, because at least a dog was loyal. And I was like, oh, the original Trump.
Well, and I was listening to Mike Stroud this morning, and Mosiah 29, and he said, the cabal had been working for a couple of decades to take over, and Obama had the 8 years that they put it into place. They were looking for the other 8 years with Hillary. He said it was a literal miracle that
Yes.
Trump won,
Yes.
because we would have been sunk. We would have been in tyranny and slavery.
Yeah.
And so, you know, when you hear people make fun of Trump or I hate Trump, we need to remind them that actually he was a modern day Cyrus,
Yeah.
that he was a miracle from God, and that they should thank their lucky stars that he
Yeah.
won.
So, yeah, Colette will be teaching on King Cyrus, and I just got a book from it.
yeah,
And
we're gonna do it.
the one page that I read in the front was George Washington studied the life of King Cyrus because he was virtuous, and his mother taught him virtue, and so, you know, as a leader he needed to have his virtues. So it
Yeah.
goes with your virtuous things.
Nancy.
Yeah, I wanted to make a point about just studying the pattern of how God is letting this all unfold, because He is greater than all of this. And when certain things happened when I lived up in Idaho, the Lord just let me know, like when Trump won, He just said, I'm letting them down easy, because that caused such a dissonance in people. But He also showed me how much He loved all His children. And so it's very merciful that, I mean, we didn't know how corrupt it was, but Trump, if he did nothing else, he didn't get us into wars. There's a whole bunch of amazing things. But see, there are people that are trusting him more than God still, and that, you know, we all get to recalibrate in studying how is God letting this play out, but also keeping exact with the prophecies and promises. He all foresaw this, so how can we create bridges with others? Because that's what this has done, is to help wake up people. He knew that. We didn't. We already saw so much corruption, couldn't even stand it, and then now we're seeing so much more. So, like, he's got to give everybody a fair choice. If it would have happened, that's why he got in, because with Hillary, nobody would have known how corrupt all this
Oh, I
was.
know.
And we would have seen
Absolutely.
this in ourselves. All of us have gone through,
Yeah.
you know, divorcing ourselves from false beliefs.
Right.
And all of us have some of them.
Helena.
And I think we need to hold members of the church to a higher standard.
Yes.
And that's why I have such a hard time with Spencer Cox, because every one of us has to answer the question, are you honest in all your dealings with your fellow man? And that man can stand up in front of 4,000 delegates and lie to their face.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
You know, Trump doesn't, he's not a covenant maker to the same level that we are.
Yeah.
John Curtis and Spencer Cox are, and they are dishonest humans.
Yes.
And that should be unacceptable to a Latter-day Saint.
Absolutely. Who, was it you that had? Okay,
Yeah,
Penny.
I go back and read Isaiah 45. That is where King Cyrus is, and it says he was anointed or foreordained, and that's what I believe Trump has been done.
Yeah.
Is that he's anointed and foreordained.
Trump loves our country.
Oh, he does.
Yes, he does.
He loves the country.
And he points to
And
God. He says
Hillary
he loves God.
despises the country.
Yeah.
And Biden despises the country. And when they make these comments about how, you know, these, well, they used to call them teabaggers, and then the basket of deplorables, and then what's the latest one that they're calling us, the MAGA extremists?
We're
You
on
know,
the FBI list. The Equal
Yes.
Forum in Utah is on the hate list.
They don't love our country. They don't
Austerity.
love the people.
You
You
know,
can't, and
yeah.
that's what Spencer Cox did, and he came in and called them extremists. He doesn't love the people.
He said
He
what was
loves
it
the
in
power.
About hate? Tell
Yeah,
us
he
about
also
hate.
said the reason you're booing me is because I don't hate enough.
Yes.
He was saying,
Called
you
them
guys are all full of
haters.
hate and you're angry that I don't hate like you do.
Yeah.
Projection.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Everything they accuse is what they're doing.
Exactly. Absolutely. All right, let's go into this. Announced at last, shortly after 3 p.m. on September 17th, 1787, the Constitution was signed, and the people would meet the new Constitution at last. Set before these Americans was a set of rules for the United States of America. 13 entities joined together, yet separate, independent. 50 men with unparalleled understanding who created it.
Wasn't that 56 that created the
55.
Constitution?
I think
56
there was
total.
I think there was 55, or maybe it's what's the big one? Hancock and then I don't know.
Yeah, Hancock signed it that day, and then later on they did the other, but it was 56 men.
So, freedom under the Constitution. The Constitution was analyzed, reanalyzed, and then analyzed again. Slowly, the details of its character emerged, offering exciting new advantages. Perhaps the greatest blessing was freedom.
It was 56.
All people want to be free. And they want to make their own choices, how to create, and then how to live, and how to think. All of us want to be free. God gave us life intended that we be free to act for ourselves.
It's an eternal requirement.
Yeah, absolutely. Protection under the Constitution. As the people pored over their new governmental birth certificate, they found protections denied from British rule. The protections people sought had been unknown in most of the world's history. So now they had a system to put limits on power so their unalienable rights to not be violated. Now freedom of religion to keep the right, wrong, good, evil untainted by politics. I know, isn't it fun? Man, I got a frog going. Prosperity under the Constitution. So all people desire prosperity. Colonial era Americans were no exception. When they understood the prosperity available through the Constitution, they embraced it fully. Prosperity results from the integrity of a nation's citizens and virtues. When government abandons virtue, prosperity wanes. Few nations have maintained prosperity indefinitely, and comfort leads to complacency and decay. America is proving this sad principle today.
That mirrors with the Book of Mormon, the prosperity.
I know, I was just listening again, I was hearing that today, and
Actually, that mirrors us today.
Yeah.
Yes.
We are too comfortable and
Yes.
we don't get it.
Apathetic. You know
Yes.
what percentage voted? Only 17%
isn't that
in Utah
sad?
County.
See, in your last slide, what is the principle in that one? The principle that we're talking about.
Prosperity under the Constitution,
So what's the principle of prosperity?
Virtue. If you
it's
don't
all
have virtue-
virtues, yeah.
Yeah.
That's the title.
Yeah.
Saying that it's okay to have money. See, this is what the progressives, the people who want tyranny, they don't want us to have prosperity. They're trying to get rid of the middle class. That's how you create tyranny. And so prosperity brings together ingenuity and ways to make money and capitalism. That's all good stuff. And right now, do you not constantly hear how bad capitalism is? That they don't want prosperity.
So the next class that Jillian's teaching in Al is the Naked Communist ended last night, is the Naked Capitalist.
Capitalist. Oh, okay.
And it
that's
does
cool.
say virtuous government will enact virtuous laws and people will thrive.
Yes.
So
Lawrence?
Take it back to the plan of salvation. Christ, our God, is offering everything, all abundance to us, and what is Satan doing? Taking it all away.
Absolutely.
So, that's where we go back to. That's the
If I were
the
defending
driving
this,
principle.
how would I say it? So, okay, one of the first principles of the Constitution is the virtue of prosperity. Is that how I would communicate?
No, it's just one of the many things that the Constitution gives the people.
we
The right.
we always say, look to God, not government. And if it's not a virtuous law, that's how we measure every single law as a citizen or as in the legislature. If it's not virtuous, then we're against it. So it needs, which means
When
moral.
you're taking away people's rights,
Well, only moral and religious people can maintain liberty.
Yes.
And so that's why we have to understand what virtues, the missionaries right now, they look at Jesus's virtues and study his virtues. And we should be emulating Jesus, right? And so,
So in the Mothers, I'm sorry to
No,
take
you're
this
fine.
time, but in the Mothers of Liberty, the
Moms for America.
Yes,
yeah.
they said there's 26 principles.
Mm-hmm.
So my goal is to try, when I'm with someone, just.
Yeah, you need to say the principle, yeah.
So are we talking right now about a principle and?
Yes,
use-
that would go with only a moral and virtuous people
So the principle is moral and
Virtuous people.
Uh-huh.
And these will
I was
be,
just clarifying.
and when you have a moral and virtuous people, these things will come to fruition.
Yes.
So
So,
the first principle of the Constitution is a moral and virtuous.
Yeah. Yeah, if you don't have moral laws, you will have decay, just
yeah,
like Pehrson said.
absolutely.
So, but if I'm arguing, let's say the
Yes.
first principle, okay,
Yeah.
I'm just clarifying.
Mhm. Yeah.
Okay, peace under the Constitution. Government has two responsibilities to its peaceful citizens. The first is to create an environment that fosters peace, and the second is to protect its citizens from anything that destroys peace. Unwise laws destroy peace, and God's laws promote and encourage it. Now I put omnibus because when I put this together, they had just passed the omnibus, and it really ticked me off. Well, if you don't understand what an omnibus is, let's say a congressman or a senator puts out a law, and this law is that you shouldn't kill, and it's a good law, right? But let's put we'll give Ukraine some money, and we'll save the sea turtles, and we'll send some money to Antifa. So they put all these bills together in this one big bill. The omnibus is supposed to be you shouldn't kill. But you put all this other garbage in there and they want to get it passed. And so this is not wise. It destroys our country. It destroys peace. It is not good law. Good government must be paired with virtuous people because they promote peaceful living. Again, we come back to the virtuous people. Only a virtuous people is capable of freedom. You can see that right there.
But you see it in the Book of Mormon everywhere.
Absolutely. Preparing for freedom. Looking at the foundations of the grand document that would guide America is like reviewing the ancestry of a great historical figure. Greatness does not arise in isolation. It is rooted deep in soils rich with tradition and watered with virtue. God established our ancestral line to prepare for her divine stewardship. When a man stands for freedom, he stands for God. And again, this is the cabal, whatever you want to call them, the deep state, whatever. They do not want that. They don't believe in God, first of all. So they believe in themselves and their power.
That's the key, what you just said. With the naked communists, the whole thing was they are anti-God
Yes.
and we're pro-God.
And look what they're doing right now. They're constantly bashing Christians. Our leadership, people who are supposed to be our virtuous leaders, and they're bashing Christianity. No. Settlers in America. So we're going to talk about Jamestown, 1607. So between Columbus in 1492 and 1607, Jamestown, Franciscan and Dominican friars charted North America and taught the indigenous people. And by the 1600s, God was ready to begin the colonization of North America. So you think about that. It's getting ready to bring the Book of Mormon here. We're just a couple hundred years away. So,
What
yeah.
does charted North America mean? What does that mean?
Charted?
Charted.
Get on boats and do a charter and come to America?
Chartered to North America,
Well, no.
right?
I don't
They
know.
came.
When you do a chart too, you make a map.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You chart a map.
Friars charted to North America. I probably should have had two in there. Yeah.
All right.
They got on boats and came here. Have you ever heard of you charter a ship? You sure?
Yeah.
Yeah? God was ready to begin the colonization. So unfortunately, none were farmers. And the natives gave limited help. And starvation loomed. Had the colonists been more spiritual, God would have assisted and enlightened their burdens. You can see they had their little camp, but they struggled. They just didn't know how to take care of
They
themselves.
didn't do like the Mayflower. They didn't have the Mayflower Compact where they made a covenant with
Yeah,
God.
well, we're going to
So-
talk about that. The Pilgrims.
I will. Sorry, go ahead.
Turn the page.
But Colette, on
Yeah.
the last page, go back for just a second
Uh-huh.
and apply that to us today.
We need a covenant.
Our
Yeah.
burdens could be lightened if we would turn to God, and we're no different
Amen.
than they were. We're not doing it.
I know.
We think we're so different, and we're not.
We're not. We're just in more technology, finer clothes, but we're doing the same things. I had a picture and I didn't put it in. of 3 people on their knees in business suits with their heads in the sand. I should have put it in.
So I think that's why conference and why President Nelson with his, since he's been prophet, has had 12 talks, and it's all the covenant covenant keeping, covenant, now we have temple, social living, it's covenants. If we
It
don't
is.
covenant with God, we are gonna fail like they did.
Absolutely.
Well, that's one of the things that a friend of mine saw, is that in the future that men that were priesthood holders in their white shirts and ties would be out praying in front of their houses that God will protect all their stuff. And that their hearts were set on their stuff.
Yeah, exactly. So, the Pilgrims of 1620, Christian unity. So this one actually isn't the good one. But in 1620, 102 pilgrims arrived in Plymouth. And led by William Bradford, they desired to carry the light of Christ. The pilgrims tried to live religious communism. They nearly all starved to death. They repented, and miracles appeared. Indian Samoset came to camp and said, "Welcome." He and Squanto taught them how to grow crops, extract maple syrup, stalk deer, and use native healing herbs for illness. So, we talked about this in detail before of the Christian communism, and it doesn't work. Once you give people their own little plot of land and let them be and have ingenuity and do for themselves, they flourish. It's called capitalism. So communism doesn't work. Arrival of the Puritans in 1630. The Puritans came to America to be a light on a hill, a covenant people. They arrived in the area of Boston and settled 40 miles north of the Pilgrims. Their leader was John Winthrop. 20,000 Puritans and 45,000 Englishmen came to shore, and the Puritans built a covenant community where the laws of God, rather than man, would govern.
Another covenant.
They were the good ones.
Where are they?
They're dead. John Winthrop. He was the Puritan Moses. Winthrop was a rock of stability to his fledgling colony, equal to Nehemiah of the Old Testament. His importance to the Puritans paralleled the influence of George Washington. Winthrop was a Cambridge-educated attorney and magistrate in England. His single-handed leadership helped the starving camps by laboring side by side until there was not an idle person to be found in the communities. And that was the problem with the Christian communism, is nobody wanted to work. They all just wanted stuff. And this is the problem we're having today, is the government's just giving them stuff, throwing stuff at people with the welfare programs and all these other programs that they don't have to work. People who dig in and work become
Idle.
not idle.
The other part,
Yeah.
sorry.
No?
I
Yeah.
just-
So it says he provided the leadership that kept them focused on their Christ-centered objectives.
Yes. Yes.
So we
See,
need-
there's just not room to put all that in
Yeah,
there.
I know.
We're
And
just
it's
testing
just,
you.
we just have to have leadership
Does
that
anybody
is
want my book? You can follow
Christ-centered.
Colette,
Yes.
you know what's interesting is when you go to the scriptures,
You're doing great.
the very first commandment that God gave to Adam and Eve, before he even mentioned the name of Jesus Christ, was learn how to work hard. It seems like that is such a building block to
It is.
everything else in life. If you don't learn how to work hard, it's really hard to learn anything else.
I agree 100%. So, thank
It
you.
also gives you dignity.
It does. And a self-esteem, accomplishment, and you're also teaching your family. You know, Steve and I, over the years, we did property management, and we were struggling financially. We drug our poor kids along, and they painted, and they helped fix, they cut lawns. We made our kids work.
Amen.
Good job.
And they all, for the most part, are do pretty good about taking care of themselves. So, yeah, yes.
So we watched a movie last night called Unsung Heroes, where they have to.
You gotta
the kids,
see
The kids have to go to work
It's
and
awesome.
to help the family, and
Cool. Unsung Heroes.
It's
Okay.
in the movie theater.
It's
Yeah.
a small bone family
It's like
story.
the-
Oh, I heard about that.
I,
Yeah.
thank you for saying, I haven't heard about that, so thank you.
For King and Country.
Really
Awesome. Very
It's
spiritual.
like, it's
Awesome.
Cool. All right.
Because I never even try to go to a movie unless someone tells me, because they're so bad.
Escape from Germany is a good one too.
Yeah, okay.
Oh, that's the LDS missionary ones. Yeah.
Juicy Christians.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Life among the Puritans. The Puritans were genuine people who enjoyed life in the same way we do today. The book, The Light and the Glory, described the everyday lives of the people. I own that book too. It's written about Christopher Columbus, but it goes into depth about the people. Described the everyday lives of the people. And Puritan religious services, which were considered mandatory and lasted several hours. Music was vital in worship, and the Puritans brought laughter into challenging lives, giving them resilience. The Puritans received divine assistance. God watched over the Puritan colonies and sent them miracles. They were very much in need. Two ships at sea, one heading for New England and one for Barbados. The second ship was sinking, but had a good deal of food and water. The first ship had no water and scarce food. They came across each other on the sea and rescued each other. So we're going to talk about some of the miracles that are going to go on. But divine assistance, part of life's battles, isn't it? George Whitefield and the Great Awakening of 1734. So Whitefield was a student of Oxford and turned his life to God and came to America. He preached to thousands about Christ. Workmen shut their shops and farmers left their plows in the fields, and families came together to hear him preach. Crowds jammed the roads in great throng, and Benjamin Franklin was his good friend, and people began to change their lives. Towns became safe, and the wayward repented and lived a covenant life. And I think of that, and I see what's going on right now with these colleges, with these radicals, and how wayward they are, and how contentious. Yes.
It's interesting, just a few years ago, there was a great Jesus revolution happening.
Yeah.
I mean, there was a movie about it, and now it's flipped, completely flipped.
And that's just like Book of Mormon. They're peaceful and calm for a time, then boom, it happens again. Yes.
I mean, you talk
Sure.
about treats and chocolate and things at conventions or wherever. They feed the kids free.
Oh,
a
I know.
free meal every week.
Oh, I know.
To go and listen. So
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so British oppression builds. No, sorry about that.
I wasn't a part of it.
I know. Parliament made the laws, and the colonies governed themselves under state charters. The colonists tried to tread a path of neutrality. America's churches wanted British non-involvement. And in 1685, King George II noticed and ordered British state religion. Later revoked it, but the feeling grew among the colonists that resistance to tyranny was obedience to God.
I wish we'd still have that.
I know. Conflict and independence. America was becoming prosperous. Cotton and tobacco sprang from her soil. She was becoming important, and Britain stood to capitalize on America's growth. British began to overtax, and King George III needed money to pay its worldwide property. With no voice, American money was being forfeited, and this pushed Americans into a wall of resistance against their masters. Samuel Adams, he was the flame of the revolutionary fire. So without Samuel Adams, there might have been no freedom for America. He was a kind, deeply religious man whose life was governed by unfailing integrity. His heart was in politics. That's actually his statue right there. He was quick to understand and calm in clashes. He was Harvard educated, yet he knew most every citizen in Boston by name, trade, and political preference. His political positions were not tainted by personal ambition or self-interest. He was really a very stately man, and people really loved him. Rebellion erupts. British were unable to care about the issues to Americans. They made little attempt to compromise their position. This was clear. This is how it is. Period. So,
America right now.
yeah,
With the rest
exactly.
of the world.
First was the Stamp Act, and that was in 1764, and then 1767 was the Townshend Act, duties on imported goods. So in 1770 was the Boston Massacre. There was a little snowball fight, and it turned into a massacre. I mean, the British were really starting to come down on the people, and they were not happy. And then 1773 was the Boston Tea Party. Time and time again, the British moved to irritate and increase conflict rather than resolve it. So they threw the tea in the ocean. And that didn't make them very happy. So, the colonists protest. Throughout the 13 colonies, they resisted their British oppressors. And in South Carolina, men gathered around the Liberty Tree and pledged to resist tyranny. The Sons of Liberty formed across the colonies to protest British oppression. And there was the Daughters of Liberty to recast bullets when King George II's statue was pulled down and used pewter dishes to make bullets. So they dug in and they helped. The War for Independence begins in 1775. The unofficial war began at Lexington, Massachusetts, and the Minutemen had been alerted to British coming by Paul Revere on his famous ride. The confrontation ended with 8 Patriots dead and 10 wounded. The Redcoats, under General Gage, attacked Boston and lost the first 2 assaults, but won the third, killing 500 Patriots. This was the Battle of Bunker Hill. Finding a commander. So, at the urging of Adams, Congress appointed George Washington. There were others more qualified. First of all, there was Charles Lee. He was a professional soldier and was in second in command and later betrayed America. I wonder why he wasn't in. Then there was Horatio Gates, and he was behind Washington to get him ousted. Great guy, And then there was Thomas Conway. Professional soldier Conway instigated a plot to have Washington replaced, calling him inept, and joined Gates in a cabal to destroy Washington. So, can you see why he wasn't chosen? They weren't chosen? You can see why Washington was.
Because he had virtue.
Yes. Washington is rightly called the father of our country. He became a military genius, finding creative ways and not being trained for the military with the limited resources they had. Over and over, he gave credit to God for his success. He was very private about his beliefs, yet he mentioned God, his providence, and the Bible hundreds of times in his writings. He received divine protection. He's such a statesman. Oh, beautiful man. Have any of you been to Mount Vernon?
Yes.
It's so awesome. Oh, loved it. So, we're going to writing the Declaration of Independence. Though war had begun, the Americans had not yet declared independence from the mother country. It was Thomas Jefferson whose mind and pen gave form to the document that changed the world. It took 17 days to write, and Jefferson aligned with the ancient freedom principles he had come to love in the Old Testament. He even had his own Jefferson Bible, and he just took all the quotes of Jesus Christ and made this Bible. He wasn't rewriting the Bible. He just wanted the words of Christ. Okay, Thomas Jefferson, who was the author of the Declaration. Thomas Jefferson must stand as one of whom the doors of history hinged. Born and educated in Virginia, he knew more about the law than anyone. He spoke 5 languages, studied Greek, Roman, European classics, and Old Testament and New Testament and ancient Anglo-Saxons. He was Secretary of State for Washington, Vice President under John Adams. He was 2 terms president and then died on July 4th, 1826.
He wasn't into gaming.
No. You know that when he was writing the Declaration, he was so ill. He had serious migraines, and he still wrote it. And he would stop and play the violin to try to help calm his horrible migraines. And he wrote the whole Declaration in the 17 days. It was remarkable. He was a remarkable man. So the finished Declaration. The Declaration was a monumental step, but without military victory it meant nothing. Immense sacrifice would be required. The Declaration was signed July 4th, 1776, and released to the world on July 6th. Newspapers throughout the colonies spread the word on July 9th. And Washington read the document to his troops. Okay, John Adams, voice of freedom. Adams was a simple, deeply religious man, plain in dress and without superficial social skills. He was sensible and scholarly. He was elected Massachusetts' first Continental Congress, and he found his place in the Philadelphia Convention. Adams was instrumental in drafting the Declaration of Independence, and Adams became our first vice president, and second president in 1796. Okay, ringing for liberty. When the Declaration of Independence was announced, bells rang throughout the 13 colonies. A huge bronze bell known as the Liberty Bell hung at the Philadelphia State House at the scene of the signing. It first announced the breathtaking news that a new and independent country had been born. The Liberty Bell cracked 59 years later while being rung for Chief Justice John Marshall's funeral and one of the signers of the Declaration.
If it cracks, does it not ring very well?
I don't think they ring it. I think with it being cracked, it's just it's a monument now, so. Do you remember those of it? Didn't you and Heidi went to Texas with us with the Glenn Beck rally? You didn't go with us? Tammy, did you go when I went?
But I just went.
They had the Liberty. He got permission. No, he had. Was it a replica? They had a replica of the Liberty Bell there. It was really cool.
So right now, Glenn Beck in his vault has the original Declaration of Independence that included, about slavery being stopped.
The original Declaration?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you should see it's called the Vault, because it's like out of a sci-fi museum. Sci-fi thing where it has all the lights and everything if somebody steals it.
Lasers. Oh, the lasers.
Like all the stuff in there that he has collected is like so worth the history. He's trying to protect history. That they have lasers everywhere, and you have to be very.
Yeah, he's been quite the collector. The miracle of Jefferson and Adams. In Jefferson's and Adams' later years, a vengeful political climate made enemies of the two former friends and allies. They disagreed over the French Revolution. Friends and family mourned the death of their friendship. Benjamin Rush, one of the signers, got the ball rolling to rekindle the friendship. On July 4th, 1826, both friends died 5 hours apart, 50 years after their signing. Is that not amazing? Tammy.
One thing about Benjamin Rush I learned was that he was trying to get an amendment to guarantee our health rights. And now people, during the pandemic, they were like, I wish Benjamin Rush's thing would have passed. We would have been protected.
Yeah.
So he foresaw that. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, Adams and Jefferson, were bitter enemies for a while. But it was good to see that they had
repaired it.
repaired
He
it,
died on the
yes.
same day, July.
America versus Britain. We got David and Goliath. America should have been quickly crushed in the Revolutionary War. In 1775, Great Britain was the most powerful nation on earth. The Continental Army was a ragtag, undisciplined crew with weapons brought from home. America's will win. To win was her strength. Hello, I can't even read. They fought for their freedom, their homes, their wives, and their children. They were stronger than they appeared. I love that picture. I'd throw it in. Miracle of the Cannon. So, Henry Knox, he was 25-year-old Boston bookseller, and he became Washington's chief of artillery. His booming voice matched the voice of cannons and matched the love of cannons. The army needed a cannon to defend Boston. Henry remembered the abandoned Fort Ticonderoga near Canada. He brought 58 pieces from that camp, the fort. Some of them were 1,000 pounds, some were 5,000 pounds. Through many hardships, was able to deliver. Henry Knox was a hero. He spent 8 years of faithful service at George Washington's side. There's the Fort Ticonderoga. And there they are together in a picture. That was a miracle. They had to make these sleds, and it was in the snow, and they're dragging them with horses and these great big cannons. But boy, it sure helped. The Battle for Boston, 1776. The British occupied Boston, and the key to Boston's defense was Dorchester Hill. Junior officer Rufus Putnam saw a book with spy diagrams called Chandeliers by French inventors. Putnam presented it to Washington, so 800 men built and placed these wood fortifications on the hill. A heavy mist, I love this, a heavy mist rose so they could not be seen. At dawn, the British were stunned. A violent storm arose and they evacuated Boston. So they had all these fortifications with wood, and then this fog, this mist comes in. I mean, it's just amazing to me.
What's a spy diagram?
He found some kind of, if you read the chapter, it talks about how he somehow found their book, or he went in and spied on them and found their
Like the military plans?
military plans, yes. And I can't fit all that in there, I'm sorry. I tried to get as best I could, but anyway, yeah, so they built it, and boom, they got him out. The Miracle on Long Island, August 1776. Washington's army was defeated on Long Island and lost over 1,000 men. Trapped on the shores of Brooklyn, over 20,000 British men and 450 ships descended. It was hopeless. An unusual fog, so dense, fell upon the river, no man could see 6 yards ahead. The evacuation was a success, and not one life was lost. Another miraculous event foretold. I mean, it's just amazing how God helped them. The general retires. The Battle of Yorktown secured the American victory, and a peace treaty was signed. April 1783. Washington remained on duty for 8 months until the British troops had departed. Washington finally proceeded to Annapolis to resign his commission before the Confederation of Congress. Wanting to return to Mount Vernon, much of his public life was ahead of him, though. He always longed for Mount Vernon.
Isn't it interesting that it's a 7-year
What number are you
period?
on?
I think, because, we're told today that our great calamity will be 7 years of darkness, you know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
So there's kind of a connection, because you wonder if we might not have to fight in America like they did for our liberty
Yeah.
once again.
We don't know. We don't know. All right, verging on economic collapse. So So the Articles of Confederation is what the document, we didn't have a constitution at the time, but the Articles of,
Did you skip a whole bunch of them?
no. Did I skip one or two? Maybe I did.
What page is it? 5 point?
Verging on economic collapse.
Okay.
The Articles of Confederation, the part of the problem they had with the Revolutionary War is the Articles did not give them, the states wouldn't send money if they didn't want to because it wasn't designed to help. And they were really, it was a lame document. And after the war, the Articles of Confederation moved uncomfortably close to bankruptcy. War requires a chest full of gold, and the colonies had none. Printing money was the path to economic downfall. Spending ensued, which was almost the last stage of national humiliation. A sound government system was badly needed and soon. And so we're living the same type of thing now. We're not bankrupt, but we are. I mean, they're just printing money to keep us afloat. If they'd stop printing the money, it'd go down. So, that's why we have inflation so high right now, is they're printing money. The states agreed to meet. 12 of the 13 states sent delegates to the convention. Rhode Island did not. They were dubbed Rogue Island. All through the drafting and ratification process, she ignored the Constitution. The rest of the states pressed on without her, ratified the Constitution, and began to treat her as a foreign, meaning treating Rhode Island as a foreign entity. And they were faced with the possibility of tariffs. Rhode Island finally ratified the Constitution. So, when push comes to shove, yes. So now we have Rhode Island as part of the 13 original colonies. James Madison, who was the father of the Constitution. Madison of Virginia was the mastermind of the Constitution. His great gift was to know the political process, and he spent his life in politics and was passionate about rights and constitutional freedoms. He was present every hour of the convention. He sat front and center where he took copious notes. He was the most able political leader at the convention.
That's because he had Dolly Madison treats in his.
There you go. those yellow, what are those treats called? Yeah. Okay, the miracle at Philadelphia. The purpose of the convention was to rewrite the Articles of Confederation. To get the states to agree was a monumental task. This was a multi-step process. If the nation failed, it faced humiliation. There were the needs of large and small states. The 55 men who attended the Constitutional Convention proved equal to the task. Now, it says there's 55 there, Tammy, so.
Yeah, I think the 56 was John Hancock. He's the first one that signed, and then they didn't sign. The other 55 men signed later.
So setting the rules. Now, how many of you have ever watched A More Perfect Union? I think I burned copies for everybody. And it's actually quite shocking. I don't know how true to form it is, but they get in there and they say, okay, all of you who want to do away with the Articles of Confederation, say aye. Aye! Okay, it was gone, just like that. So I honestly think that they do not want to do another constitutional convention because they don't want to get in there and get, who wants to do with the Constitution? Aye! And then have it gone like that, So I can kind of see that, but they can set up rules and guidelines to protect the Constitution and change some amendments, but we don't have strong enough people to do that. And that's where what we face right now.
Well, the ones that would do
That's
it
what I was gonna say.
don't get the support of the media.
Exactly.
And their arguments,
Just don't get in office.
the establishment politicians, their arguments sound valid if you don't understand what you're teaching.
Yeah, exactly. Should have stuck that in my mouth. Okay. Setting the rules. The process began with the selection of George Washington as president. His presence kept the convention together. Strict rules of secrecy were set. No copies of the meetings were allowed. The doors were guarded and windows closed in the middle of the summer, no less. Can you imagine? You don't have air conditioning in the middle of the summer, and every door and every window is shut. I mean, it must have got ripe in there. And so, when Washington approved the measure, delegates reported that his face showed it. So, when they would go through and decide on things, they said that his face, they could actually tell he felt yes or no, that was right. And it reminded me, do you remember when, was it Brigham Young, that when they called him as president, everybody's face, they saw Joseph Smith?
In Brigham Young's face.
Brigham Young's face, yes. And I thought, ooh, that's kind of the same thing. I don't know, it's kind of cool. 2 plans and a third. So it became obvious that the convention was not a revision of the Articles of Confederation, but the creation of a new system of government. And many plans were brought forth to no avail. One proposed to return to the British system with a king. Can you imagine, after everything you went through, and they, let's go back and do it again.
And we see that in the Book of Mormon, where they begged for a king. And
Yes!
What?
Yes, it's crazy.
Because we don't like change. We
Yeah.
prefer the status quo than take the risk on
Yes.
the unknown.
And
Yes.
it's harder work to govern yourself than to let somebody else tell you what to do.
It's true.
And this is where we are right now. We're all relatively comfortable in Babylon. But our Father is saying, no, create Zion. And we're going, oh, that's kind of scary. I quite like Babylon.
I don't know what it looks like, so maybe we better not go
Maybe
there.
we better not go there, exactly. And that's where this faith is coming in. He's saying, why don't you try stepping in my direction? Because I kind of know what I'm talking about.
Exactly. So the delegates made every attempt to achieve unity through the voting process. Still, 3 topics required compromise: slavery, and regulation of commerce, and representation in Congress. Now, this is obviously current day, but you get the idea. Yeah. Because we didn't have that many back then. Okay, what about a president? The issue of the nation's executive was one of the most important matters. James Wilson from Pennsylvania championed the idea of a single executive, and Edmund Randolph of Virginia wanted 3 presidents, which seems silly to me. Eventually, the 3 delegates agreed 1 native-born American elected for 4 years for 4 years and would preside over the country, and they assigned 6 carefully controlled limitations and responsibilities. Admitting new territories. This is where the state of Utah, really, I think Morgan Philpott and the Northwest Ordinance really comes into play, because we were cheated. We were cheated when we came into the Union, and I'll explain that in a minute. The delegates understood that new states would enter the Union in the future, so they laid careful plans for those events. I think it's events.
Yep.
Okay. James Wilson wanted equal admission and for Western territories, believing equal admission would foster believing unequal admission would foster jealousy between new and old states. To Americans, property was freedom. Not owning property was considered a sign of laziness. Okay, so when we came in, they took, right from the jump start, 2/3 of our state, 66.7%.
Well, they had to,
Our
because we were creating our own nation. It was the kingdom of God on earth. And Brigham Young was sending out, and from Canada, up into Canada, clear down to Mexico, we were creating our own nation.
Yeah,
And so they had to come in swiftly to put us down.
I know. And so I'm talking the federal government.
Yes.
Yes, they
Federal
took
government.
66% of our land to allow us to come in. And you're right, their hands were tied. We had to do it that way, or we weren't going to be brought into the Union. But they were supposed to be on equal footing. Back east, they don't
By
own.
law, it was supposed to be on equal footing.
Absolutely. And yet they said, well, you can't come in unless you give us.
Right.
2/3 of your state.
And they gave us a governor.
Oh, yeah, they appointed him. We didn't even get
Local government,
to vote our own governor in. So, yeah. I mean, totally went against the Northwest Ordinance. Okay, so Benjamin Franklin. The men who laid the foundation of the American government were the finest men God had available. Benjamin Franklin stood out as an author. He wrote the popular Poor Richard's Almanac. His genius extended to politics. He served as governor for 3 years in Pennsylvania and signed the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution. His last public plea before he died was to repeal slavery, which he loathed.
And if you haven't read the true George Washington or the true Benjamin Franklin, those books give so much detail about their lives without all the falsehoods.
Yeah, yeah. Now, I think there's a real Thomas Jefferson, the real Franklin, and the real
Yeah, those
Washington.
three.
Those
You're
three,
right.
yeah. So, and Benjamin Franklin, we know all the inventions he made. He was a brilliant, brilliant man. Signatures and a Bill of Rights. The long-anticipated moment had arrived. 55 delegates had participated to create the Constitution on September 17th, 1787. And think about this. Isn't it sad that every year on September 17th we don't honor that? We don't worship it? I mean, it's no different than the 4th of July. That was, I mean, we broke away from freedom, but this was our law of the land. Why don't we have Constitution Day? Why isn't it celebrated in Washington?
We used to.
Yeah.
We used to. I know. It's been taken
The
away.
first time I saw Sebastian Gorka was on September 17th promoting Constitution Day. And notice the 17 days to write the Declaration of Independence.
Yeah.
This is on the 17th, and 17 in the Bible everywhere.
1787.
And it means victory. That's the day Christ overcame both death and sin.
Liberty up north in Bountiful, they celebrated it.
Yeah, they do. Yeah. So, the signing process proceeded. All 12 states present during the debates recorded signatures. The document would now go to the Confederation Congress. That's the 55. And there's the 13, 12 of the 13 signed.
But there was, yeah,
And there's
that
their
reason why John
signatures.
Hancock's so big is because he was the only one that signed it at the beginning.
Wasn't John Hancock, wasn't he on
He's like the executive of it or something. He was different.
was
that's
he
why
on
it was so
the Constitution or was he on the independent?
big.
Declaration
Oh,
of
the Declaration.
Independence.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I've got it back there.
Yeah.
Well, the declaration was agreed upon on July 3rd, but the majority of them nobody signed until July 4th, and then there were some few stragglers
Yeah.
throughout. And
Yeah,
the thing is the reason why July 3rd is important is because, and I'm not getting into it right now, but it has something to do with the July 3rd in a few years from now, in the last days. It's the last day prophecy.
Oh, wow. Wow.
By a prophet?
I haven't heard that.
Is that by a prophet?
Well, I'll get
Oh,
into
okay.
it later.
Thank you.
Well, we'll do it at the table. The fight for ratification. The Constitution was complete. Delegates met 7 hours a day, 6 days a week for 4 months. All locked up, percolating. Acting quickly and unanimously, the Confederation Congress voted to accept the Constitution after only 8 days of debate. So that's pretty cool. The Constitution now moved to the individual states for acceptance. Ratification would be long and hard fought.
So that's why I think.
That's why you needed to get 9 of the 13 to agree. So you had the delegates, but the states had to ratify it. And they did get, I think they got 9 at the beginning. So they got the ratification done. The Federalist Papers. The new Constitution created alarm and angst, and the nation thoroughly agitated. Someone needed to step forward and explain the document.
Education, education.
Yes. So, Hamilton Madison and John, I typed that wrong, John J., not John K., agreed to share the writing effort in a series of newspaper articles to explain what it was. This was known as the Federalist Papers. They had a powerful impact in which many countries have studied their words. And I'll be honest with you, I bought Glenn Beck's book that what some guy had their language, he simplified it for us. It's still an incredibly hard document to read.
Well, the King Cyrus one is that 1700 language, and it was like, I gotta go look up some words. I'm so dumbed down. I can't believe
We
I
are
don't
so
understand
dumbed down.
this.
But that's by design.
Yeah.
You look at the slaves. The slaves were not taught to read, and so therefore they couldn't fight for their rights. And we are being. It's like a chiasm. That's going back. It's pretty scary. It really is. So, all right, we're in Pennsylvania. James Wilson of Pennsylvania opposes to the Constitution, worked up people's fears, and Pennsylvania provided the first and worst of the opposition. Those against ratification were called anti-federalists. The legislative members locked themselves in their lodgings and refused to attend. I know.
Does that sound?
Remember what happened with in Wisconsin, the governor, and they were trying those people that were supposed to sign, and they took off in the car and left. Oh, the legislative members locked themselves in their lodgings. Wilson pointed out the opposition profited by the current system. Wilson was attacked, and soldiers saved him.
No, wasn't there even a plane with Texas? All the Democrats got on a plane. And flew
Oh, I
to
think
DC.
that was another thing like that. Yeah, they weren't all Democrats, by the way.
Democrats.
They have to run and hide. Okay, so in Massachusetts, we're talking about now these people that for the ratifications, just so you understand. So Samuel Adams was opposed to the federal Constitution. As in Pennsylvania, the anti-federalists were ill-managed, wordy, and excitable. The Federalists were logical, and they were organized, and they were respectful. Adams changed his mind. His opinion carried weight, and after 6 days of heated discussion, Massachusetts was the sixth state to ratify by a narrow margin of 187 to 168. One delegate who changed his vote had to move in fear. So, can you see the adversary working here, trying to keep people not wanting this beautiful, godly document? It's pretty sad. So the Constitution was ratified in Massachusetts. In Virginia, Patrick Henry, the Federalists warned of dire consequences if ratification failed. Patrick Henry rebutted. Virginia has no unrest under the Articles of Confederation. And he carried on and on, standing up for the people, in front of the people. Well, James Madison, to Henry's emotions, returned with logic, careful and measured, and he was brilliant. Even Governor Randolph changed his vote. Virginia ratified the Constitution, 89 to 79. Henry pledged to be a peaceful citizen. So Patrick Henry was fighting against it, but after he came around. Waiting and celebration. 9 had been the magic number. Without ratifying votes from 9 state conventions, the U.S. would remain under the Articles of Confederation and almost certainly fail. When the Constitution was finally unveiled, we, the people of the United States, was 4 pages long. For 10 months, the country held her breath in suspense. Now it was done. We have become a nation. Ratification. Basic governing principles. Our founders embraced sound principles in drafting the Constitution. These principles were not new. They came from God, came from God from the beginning. Moses had them. The Anglo-Saxons had it. John Locke, Cicero, Polybius, Adam Smith, and Montesquieu. Who knew 55 men could come together who were so well versed in the great political classics? They were all promoted to search out wisdom from the masters of political thought. These men were all they used parts of their teachings. the American political tradition. To use wise men's words. Is the Constitution outdated? Well, you know, Obama said that. Ruth Bader Ginsburg said that. It was a charter of negative liberties. Some say our Constitution no longer works. It's an outdated document for a simpler time.
Spencer
It-
Cox is saying that.
Yeah. It is not outdated. It is profoundly more than a statement of political rules. It is a document of human nature, a statement of man's universal tendency to usurp and abuse power when given the opportunity. Our founders were optimists, but also realists. They recognized the thirst for power, and checks and balance place limits for the good of the people. So you've got the three, the executive, the legislative, and the judicial, and there's supposed to be checks on each other. We don't have that anymore, but that's supposed to be it. Rights and duties of the government. Our government, yeah,
You know, Spencer Cox wants to change that we don't elect an attorney general anymore.
Yep.
He wants to assign it,
Yeah.
because there's
So,
checks and balances.
yeah. So the 31,
like
the
it.
group of 31, which is Sisters of Liberty and Moms for America, we signed a thing with the other 30, you know, a total of 31, and said we don't agree with that, and you don't represent we the people. And so,
cool.
so it's good to have groups. It's good to, that
Yes.
we have our
So what
groups.
are the
Many
31
voices.
31
So it's called Empowered Families Coalition. Marilee Boyack started it, and she's the pro-life. But we have parental rights groups, 31 groups.
Okay.
And so Sisters of Liberties, we put our signature on all the time, and we're invited to
Yeah.
meetings, and same with Moms for America. So it's good to be, you know, that's how we're at root, grassroots fighting back.
yes.
It's called empowered what?
Empowered Families Coalition.
Our government operates on the principle of inalienable rights given by God. They don't come from government or from man. We are children of a divine God who loves us. Rights require a force to safeguard them. Workable government is an essential part of any society. Too little government creates anarchy, and too much creates tyranny. We need to value our duties and rights. To do less is to lose our balance. I thought that was cool looking.
I love it.
Yeah. Vertical powers and local government. So good government keeps the greatest power close to the people. Jethro offered Moses a plan to organize Israel into a manageable unit. Local government is likely to enforce laws fairly amongst its citizens. God's pattern of self-rule flows upward from the family to the federal level. This keeps government close to the people for their safety and protection.
And those two charts she put on there are in the 5,000-year lead.
Yeah, and I took it out of the Making of America.
Oh,
I
They're
photocopied them out. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
they're
yeah,
beautiful charts.
that's why they're not
Yeah.
real.
They're
I'm
beautiful.
scanning them and trying. Oh. Who is in charge, state versus federal? The state and federal government have different responsibilities. Our freedom depends on the balance of the two. Under the Constitution, the states were the power centers. They are sovereign units acting independently. The federal government handles all external matters for the country. The Fed should be far removed from the people to keep the people far from abuse and power. We have lost this. Absolutely. Well, no, we haven't lost it, but it's in constant battle because the federal government thinks they think that they should overshadow the states. And each state is set up like a country. And you have not your president, but your governor. And you have supposed to have Secretary of State. Our government has the, what'd you say?
Attorney General.
The Attorney General
Yeah.
instead of a Secretary of State. But whatever, you know. So, but that was done back in the 80s, I think. The 80s or 90s, they switched that over. Evil.
The governors are being taught that they don't have the power, and they're taking it by force, yeah.
Yeah.
Because of NGOs, there's a National
Yes.
Governors Association for Governors.
And they're being taught.
And
that
that's why all these NGOs are taking over our three pronged system of government.
Yeah.
We've gotta get rid of him.
The
Yeah.
AG's office, one of its responsibilities is to keep the governor in check, in balance, and that's why
What position is Deidre?
she's
Lieutenant
lieutenant.
Lieutenant governor. That's the one that's not supposed to be lieutenant governor. It's supposed to be, I think, secretary of state. And they switched it and gave her power. Did she run or was she assigned?
No, she's appointed.
She was
Oh, she's
appointed, and that's
appointed.
not supposed to be. It's supposed to be secretary of state is elected and not, too much power.
She's the one that has just come out and invalidated Lane Bangerter as Phil Lyman's running mate.
Yeah, I read
I
that.
don't know if there's gonna be a legal battle over that, but Lane Bangerter is pretty incredible.
Yeah.
You know, his father was the governor a
Yeah.
while ago, he's been on Trump's task forces for a lot.
He also was he was mission president for Brazil, and when I was studying Portugal, and in Portugal, they were in communism for 50 years, and when it fell, he was the mission president with Brazil. They brought in some Brazilian missionaries, came to Portugal, dedicated Portugal, and they had like 40,000 people be baptized in 1 month because
Is
they
it-
come out of communism.
Is the problem that they're saying he hasn't lived in Utah or something?
He lives in Idaho.
The law is in question. The law says you have to have lived here for the last 5 years. Well, he's lived here for 30 years. But under Trump, he was here and in Washington DC, so Deirdre Henderson is saying you now don't qualify under that law.
Oh, give me a break. Mitt Romney didn't live in Utah.
Okay.
Yeah, he had a house in Park City.
I thought he lived in Idaho, and that was the issue.
He might have a home in Idaho, but he has been in Utah for the last 30 years. The fact is, she doesn't want him to run any more than, there was a man by the name of Michael Cox who was running against Matt McKell. Matt McKell is one of our most corrupt senators. He's also the brother-in-law of Spencer Cox. And she got rid of Michael Cox, so now.
No,
Matt
Mike
McKell is running
Woods.
unopposed.
Mike Woods, yeah.
It's Mike Woods.
Mike Woods?
I've been on the
Okay.
phone with Mike Woods several
Thank you.
times in the last month.
Yeah.
So wait, with Deidre, she also, in the Deseret News, she's saying that it was unsafe to have children at the caucus. She's trying to get rid of the caucus too. And that was, we were there was nothing wrong, there was nothing unsafe except for what Eric Montos posted on YouTube or Rumble.
Yeah, I watched that. Yeah.
And he just shows that there was, the person who introduced Cox swore, But there was nothing I walked that whole convention, I was talking to everybody at the convention, and there was nothing that I'd feel safe with my daughter at the convention, so she's a liar.
Yeah.
Well, Todd Weiler just put a statement out that he saw someone doing the Heil Hitler salute to Trent Staggs.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's so ridiculous.
Yeah, I was
So
at Trent Stagg's booth the majority of the time, but I walked around, no.
It's so
They
ridiculous.
just lie.
Yeah.
And we're so stupid, we believe it.
Yeah. Okay, horizontal powers. Government is about power. Power tends to corrupt. Horizontal power divides authority. The original Constitution with 3 branches were separate and distinct with checks and balances. The founders knew the system would come under attack. The greatest responsibility was freedom. The rules have been undermined today. We must restore the principles.
That's why the 28 principles in the 5,000-year lead.
Yeah, we just finished it. Equality, what is it and what it isn't? We understand equality. Our elected officials focus on giving equal things. Our federal government was not assigned to provide goods, but to protect us. The Lord provides for the poor in His own way. He instructs to give freely to those in need. No group will ever have equal things. We give and provide out of charity. Government should not intervene by taking from one group and redistribute it to another. And that was Obama, right when he was campaigning, talked about redistribution of wealth. Freedom and morality intertwined. Morality and virtue are indispensable to freedom. John Adams said, "Our Constitution was made for a moral people." And Benjamin Franklin said, "Only a virtuous people are capable of freedom." Virtue and integrity define our moral code. A person without virtue can justify any self-serving scheme. If there is no punishment, we need more religion, not more laws. Separating church and state. The Constitution never mentions the separation of church and state. Congress shall make no law respecting the establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. The founders would be dismayed by what we have done with the issue. The Northwest Ordinance passed in 1787, stating religion, morality, and knowledge were necessary to good government. The golden rule in government. Few people think to apply the golden rule to government, yet our founders esteemed this ancient principle and built the Constitution around it. This law decrees no government, monarchy, oligarchy, democracy, or the blend of the three should do to its people what they want to have happen to themselves.
They taught that in school when we grew up, and
And-
now you can't do it now.
Hey Colette, that's one of our
Sisters
biggest
of
complaints
Liberty.
with John Curtis. He has taken advantage of insider trading to a level that he has become part of the rich.
Yep.
And his wife ended up defending him because he bought a lot of stock in Zoom. Because he knew what was gonna happen to Zoom because of insider trading.
Oh,
And his
wow.
wife said, it's totally legal. So you can't get him on that. I'm like, well, none of us knew what was gonna happen to Zoom. And this happens constantly.
Ask Martha Stewart if insider trading is legal.
Exactly.
No, it doesn't
And yet
apply.
she went to jail and all these
For 3
others
years.
don't.
And John
Yeah,
Curtis
it's
is
only
just,
illegal for
you know, it's
women.
legal
Yep.
for him.
Yeah.
It's so frustrating.
Well, you know what's the thing that I hate about John Curtis is he was a Democrat until they told him, our delegation told him, if he wanted to run for Jason Chaffetz's
Position?
yes, he had to change for his affiliation to Republican.
So he's still really a Democrat.
Oh, absolutely.
So the Utah Republican Latinas, I met her. She moved from California. Anna Benson. She got right in and got on the Utah Republican Latinas. Now she's our Moms for America Latina representative. Everyone in that group are Democrats, just pretending to be Republicans so they can have a voice. The Latinas can have a voice. And she's just like shocked. She's like, look what they're sending out about vilifying Phil Lyman and vilifying Trent Staggs and how they idolize Curtis and she was forced to take a picture with Curtis instead of and she's like, no, I escaped what was the craziness going on in California to come to Utah thinking that I'm joining a Republican group and I'm like, just stand your ground. She's really strong. Served a mission in Peru. Her mission president's 99 years old and still had a. She's older, and her companion, mission companion, is now our Moms for America leader in Arizona, in Pima, Arizona, and seeing all the stuff that's happening down there. And so it's just so cool. She came up to our Moms for America table at Eagle Forum, and now she's an insider. Hopefully, we're helping her with the Latina population because she's like, I'm just gonna educate them. It's all about education, and this is why we have Sisters of Liberty and
Yeah.
Moms for America. We have to educate
We
our
have
neighbors.
to know these things, ladies, or we're just going to be.
So Colette, my
gone.
question is, with your beautiful slideshow, if you can give it to all of us, then we can
Yeah.
have family home evenings, third hour
That's a great
Sundays,
idea.
and teach our children, because our children are not learning this stuff, and so share your
Well,
slides.
so, okay, and so I just did, this is gonna be fun, so this is part 1 of 2 of promises. Remember Pam Openshaw came here and did the one about, kind of like communism
Yeah.
and progressive versus,
Bestiality, all the crazy stuff.
so I did those 2 in a part 1 and part 2. I also did half of the book of The Naked Communist. I was gonna do those back to back. I just finished the 27 amendments. You know that cute little book that I took it from that. Yes, and then I used The Making of America for the verbiage.
Yay.
And so anyway, I've got that one. And what else do I have?
We love you, Colette.
Oh, and I'm going to do this one on Cyrus,
Yeah.
King Cyrus. So,
And King Cyrus goes with.
but I got to read this book and I got to read that, and then PowerPoints take 100 hours.